How's it going? It's Rocky, your stay-at-home dad, trading futures for a living. Welcome to my channel, and there will be 3 topics that I want to run through. The first one will be a high-level view of our performance this week. Second topic, I'll deep dive a bit on Friday. Friday was a roller coaster day for me, where I hit 2 max risk loss, which is 100 points per trade. And I'll run through just the ups and downs, the emotions, and exactly what happened that day. And the third and final topic will be the transparency section of this content. But before we get started, just a quick disclaimer. This is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. So week 45, I am happy to be in the green again. It's 231.82, which is not much. Some people make that in a day. Some people make that in just a couple of hours, but I am thankful for having a positive week. And really what I'm thankful for is that this graph here of how I'm tracking my progress weekly, it's progressing up nicely. Year to date, we are at $21,000. Pretty happy with that. And really this performance, you could compare to your annual salary. So it may not be impressive to some, but to me it is quite awesome because I can continue doing this daily and take care of my daughter at home full time. And to the right, just a quick overview. This was on Tuesday, November 4th. On this trade, the best trade that I had was 105 points. And the worst trade is 72 points. So I track by points because I want to be able to have the same mindset if I were trading 1 micro or 1 E-mini. So if you're new to futures, 1 micro, for example, for the MYM, 1 point or 1 tick would be 50 cents. But for 1 E-mini, which is the YM, this is what I trade, 1 point or 1 tick movement would be equals to $5. It's 10x. So it's a big difference on trading those two. And what I'm trying to get at is the fact that you probably notice I trade a lot of other funded accounts. And essentially, just so I don't psych myself out, I don't look at the P&L as much as possible. I try to look at my progress based on points. So that's why I always report all my best trade and worst trade for the day in points. And also when I do that, I'm only talking about my self-funded live account. So on the NinjaTrader, you will see this is my self-funded live account. So when I talk about the 105 points, you can look at the gross realized profit there. And if you do 105 times 5, because I traded the E-mini on this one, that equates to the 525 gross realized profit that is shown there. So our second trade for the week was on Thursday, November 6th. Best trade was 37 points. Worst trade was 24 points. So up to this point in the week, it was a strong week, undefeated week. I was quite happy with my progress. And then on Friday, which is this one here, this is when it became a bit of a roller coaster. And that's what I'll run through on the next topic, where essentially our best trade for the day on that day was 50 points, and then our worst trade was my max risk. So my max risk per trade is 100 points. So a little bit the stop loss, that's why it goes to about 101 points. And I hit this max risk twice. And what was horrible about it is that my very last trade was an emotional trade. And I'll run through that in a bit more detail on the next topic. So these were the trades that I took on Friday, November 7th. And this is my roller coaster day that I'll run through. What I'm showing are both the time-based chart on the left and the tick-based chart on the right. So this is just how I trade. If you're curious about my strategy, I'll put a link above here of me explaining it to Shay at the Humble Trader, because she did do a feature of traders that wanted to send their strategy to her, and she was going to either roast it or give it some credit. So I'll have the link above here. So on this first trade here, I did this during the Globex, so it was right before the EU opened, so I entered around the Asia hours. And I do this late in the evening because at this time I do have more time for myself. At this time, my wife has already come home from work, so she is taking over our daughter in the evening. They're both asleep, and this gives me an opportunity to look at the market and be able to trade. And that's really one of the reasons why I trade the futures market, because of the flexibility of that. With this first trade here, I'm just going to zoom in on those two. I won't go into the detail of the entry or exit, but I'll just run through the actual performance for those trades. And essentially, for this trade, I was stopped out at 47,026, and I entered at 47,127. So that was the max risk loss of 101 points. And with this trade, I think initially, to me, I didn't force anything. I followed my rules, and if we look at the time-based chart right here, you can see that I was above water for a good portion of it, but it wasn't enough for me to move my stop loss into profit, and that's just what happened. And it did hit my max risk of 100 points after being on the trade for a little bit above 2 hours. So that was our first loss for the day. And in the past, I used to, be emotional about losing, but now I make sure that after that first loss that I try to forget about it, and I enter the next trade with, a bit more fresh, I guess, without, worrying about anything. So this next trade that I took was during the US hours, and it was a rather quick trade. If you can see on the left, it only occurred in one 5-minute candle. Bring the calculator back up here again. So the exit was at 46,706, and the entry was 46,686. And that was a total of only 20 points. So what happened on this trade number 2 was that it executed on ThinkorSwim, my live account there, and it also executed on my live account on NinjaTrader. However, there was an issue with the funded accounts, because with the funded accounts, I trade those with micros. So that's the tricky part about trading both a E-mini and micro with the trade copier, is because in theory, the values from the YM and the MYM should be the same. However, there is a bit of a delta sometimes, especially when it's such a volatile market. So with this one, it executed on the YM, but not on the MYM. And I like to simplify my life and not have too much confusion. So with this one, I just exited it early, so I wouldn't get in trouble with keeping track of the funded accounts that are trading micro, especially with the trade copier. That can be quite problematic. So that was trade number 2. So if you're keeping track, our first loss was negative 101 points. We gained 20, so we are now at negative 80 points, which is not bad. It's a great way to recover or start the day back for the US hours. And then my next entry here was trade number 3. With trade number 3, okay, let me zoom out a bit on this one. And let me just mark this up so you can see exactly which one is trade number 3. So trade number 3 is this one here on the time-based chart, and this one here on the tick-based chart. So with trade number 3, what was great about this one is that I hit the right direction, right? I was underwater for a bit, as you can see here. So, but if you look in the time base, I was underwater for maybe 15 minutes total, which is not bad. That's all within my acceptable risk tolerance, I guess, per se, or more my emotional state is at, because my stop loss was 100 points below my entry of 7,667, and I'm gonna put an alert where that is, so we know where the line is. Create an alert, and we'll put 667, and there you go. So you can see that from where I entered, Never got close to my stop loss at all. However, with this trade, it was pretty slow, and I was okay with that because that's how I trade during the GoBix. I'm used to it. So let's look at the progression of this. So it's going up, it's going up, it's going up, which is great. And then it dipped all the way to my entry and went underwater. So I was a bit frustrated with that. You never want to see a positive trade go negative. But then, with my live accounts, it's a non-issue. If you're trading a funded account, especially those with a trailing drawdown, that can be very, very problematic. Again, that's the main reason why I trade a static account, so I don't have to worry about that because, a static account is what a live account is like. So something to think about there. But because of this dip below it, and I've been holding it at this point for a couple of hours, I was a bit exhausted, I guess, per se. So when it went back up and was above my entry, and it was pretty much, let me put where 100 points is here. So 867. Let me create that alert of where 867 is. Okay, that line right there. So essentially what I do is I move my stops into profit at plus 50 and at plus 75 and plus 100. That's when the market is at those values. I trail it with a 25 static for initially, and then after that is a dynamic trailing that follows it. But I was able to exit here at 815, and let me bring the calculator. The exit was 46,815, and our entry was, it's hard to see on this one here. Let me go to the right. There you go. 46,767. So that was 48 points that I was able to recover. So at that point, I've already recovered 68 points of the 101 points. Yes, it was a red day. In reality, I could have just called it a day and be done with it. However, what occurred next was this move right here. This move all the way to the top there was almost 500 points. And at that point, I guess you could say I was emotional. I was frustrated. The FOMO was there. It's one of those where I've been pretty disciplined the past few months, and I've told myself, never chase. If it left you, it left you. There will be other trades in the future. But for this one, for some reason, I think it's just I'm putting pressure on myself. My birthday's coming up. I want to be able to enjoy my birthday compared to last year where I hit rock bottom and I couldn't even celebrate my birthday. So I was trying to do it a little differently in the year 2025. And let me show you what happened on the next trade. And you can say it's an excuse, but it's where human nature took over. It was on this last one here, and this trade occurred around 12:50 in the Pacific Coast. So the last 10 minutes of the US hour. And this was tricky because I was like, okay, it's going above 500 points. And in the news, the Democrats just sent a possibility for the government shutdown to be reopened. So that's why the market at this point was pretty upbeat, I guess. And then it was DOA. So dead on arrival. The Republicans rejected it right away. And in my mind, I was like, okay, that's another volatility. Then the market should dump towards the end. So this is the part again where I allowed macro news affect my intraday trading, because in my chart, based on my rules and strategies, there was no way there that I should have been shorting. But because one, I missed out on a 500 point run, and second, just this pressure, or really unnecessary pressure for me to perform, I made this bad decision. I made a short, and then on this trade, essentially, our entry was 47,047, but we were stopped out at 47,148. So that was another max risk loss of negative 100 points. And what stings about this is on my live account, again, I only track my progress on my live account. So those 100 points for ThinkorSwim, that's $500, and that's also $500 on my NinjaTrader. So it's $1,000 that I lost from my profits. In 10 minutes, I gave back $1,000, and this is just the reality of trading. The human aspect of it, the emotional aspect, is very true. You find your own way to fix it. For me, unfortunately, all my patience and everything for the week, for the last few months, I just sort of lost it on this last one here. But I'm just glad that I was still able to somehow end the week in positive. I think in the back of my head, I knew I was up anyway, so that's why I was willing to take this risk. But that's a bad way of looking at trading. You should always, when you enter a trade, it should be brand new. You forget about what happened beforehand and you treat it as new. But this was the up and down that went through me on Friday. So this is topic number 3, our third and final topic on the transparency of where my progress is from, essentially, that I'm posting on social media. So I'm recording this on Saturday, November 8th. It's 12:48 in the afternoon. And what we're looking at here is the statement from Sunday, November 2nd to today, November 8th. And essentially, I did have to withdraw again this week because this is my source of income, my primary source of income. So I withdrew $3,000 from the account. So what we'll do is we will add this to the calculation. And the values that we care about here is our ending cash here and ending cash here from the cash and sweep vehicle and the futures cash balance. And our starting cash balances are these values here and this one here. All right, we'll bring the calculator here, and with the parentheses there, our starting cash, or rather ending cash of $25,562.23 minus $691.20 plus the $3,000 that we withdrew. Close that parentheses and then open a new one. Starting cash of $27,923.73 minus $10.60. So all of that work for the week. If we look, it's 42.10, and if we look at the value that I did report on my post there, it's pretty consistent at $42.10. Next, we'll jump into NinjaTrader. Now we're going to look at our account statement for NinjaTrader, where this is a smaller account. It currently has $6,336.04. My goal for this account is to eventually be above $17,000 because at that point, I'll be able to treat it the same way as my ThinkorSwim and be able to hold the trades overnight if need be and swing as needed. So I'll go on the upper right here, look at our statements. And for the statement, go to account balance history. We'll look at this week and we'll just adjust our start date to Saturday, November 1st. And we'll run this. And next we'll bring the calculator up. And the values that we care about, similar to what we did on the previous statement, our ending cash here and our starting cash up here. So our ending cash is $6,336.04. Subtract our starting cash of $6,062.12. So for the week, it's $273.92. And before I jump to the comparison there, you can see there, as I mentioned, I've only traded 3 days out of the 5 possible days this week. So this was Tuesday, Thursday and Friday. Anyway, for the value there of 273.92, that aligns with the value that I am showing on here, 273.92. So with those two values, you add it up, 273.92 minus 42.10. That's our grand total of $231.82 for the week. And if we compare that to an hourly rate in the US, that's way below minimum wage of $5.79 per hour. But hey, that's just the reality of what it's like to be a full-time trader. Thank you for tuning in. So that's our content for the week. If you have any questions, please reach out to me on the comments below or any social media mediums that I have. All right, have a good one. I'll see you in the next one.